Hi, and welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Passon, and I am a relationship expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of the book Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news or on social media, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think, do, or go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and their stories. So here today we have a slightly different subject. We have Eleanor Baggaley with us, and we're going to talk basically of how empowering children from a very young age will give them the strong foundations to have good relationships, not only in the future, but also within themselves. Hi, Eleanor. How are you?
Hi, Sophie. Really good, thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
So I used to be a secondary school teacher. I used to teach maths up until a couple of years ago. I left that profession because I wanted to make more of a difference in the world, and started writing children's stories, amongst other things. I'm a mum to 3 children, and they are the inspiration behind the stories. So each of the books that I've got are named after the 3 children as well.
Okay. So what did you decide to do? What was the change?
I think I realised that I'd reached a point where I was limited with the number of students that I could kind of make a difference with, that I could reach, that I could help them look at themselves, help kind of their goals and aspirations and things like that as well, and the love of maths, I suppose. So I wanted to try and explore ways that actually I could help all of those different aspects on a much wider reach. And well, I was given an opportunity kind of to do some additional maths work, which would help with that, but also I wanted to do some work of my own accord as well, to help with the aspirations side of things and starting to kind of help look at themselves, because I think that's ultimately where it starts. Those relationships that they have with themselves really can dictate what it is that they do in the future.
And how does one do that?
So the first 2 books that I wrote, Maya the Unicorn and Oscar the Dragon, they're named after my older 2 children, and those the 2 books both explore looking at yourself, kind of starting to believe in yourself in order to help kind of make your hopes and dreams come true. They have little activities in the back as well. And I think that's the activities within the back as well as the story as well, but the activities in the back are really where that helps those children to engage and look at themselves as well. So it's looking at gratitude, so things that they are grateful for. I think that really just kind of make you look at yourself, make you look at even if you think a situation isn't great, or actually it's not as bad as it could be.
And I think as well, I mean, I don't have kids, but from what I hear from other parents or what I see around, you know, an awful lot of children are not grateful at the moment. They've been raised in the Amazon kind of culture where you press a button, it turns up. And they don't realise that sometimes, you know, it doesn't just turn up. You've got to put an awful lot of hard work behind something to make it happen.
I think instant gratification has a lot to answer for, and I mean that's a whole other debate on kind of social media, and it's a can of worms, really. I suppose you could talk about that all day long. But yes, I think instant gratification, social media, Amazon Prime, the fact that we've got Netflix, even broadband that we've got now, it's not dial up. It's not like, they don't understand we had to sit for ages trying to kind of wait for the internet to kick in, or you order something.
Or when you were younger, recording a song on the radio that you liked, having to wait until it would randomly turn up to press the button.
Just waiting to press record, and then it just and if you miss it, you've got to wait a whole long time. And even television, like, it's on tap 24/7, isn't it? And it never used to be. So we really do live in a culture where there is instant gratification, and actually understanding how to be truly grateful for what you've got, even if it's not what you ideally want, I think is, well, it's crucial for adults as well as children. But I think what we find at the moment is we've got a lot of adults that are looking for support and looking at ways to kind of undo what's happened in their lives previously, whereas I really strongly believe that if we support children correctly now, when they are young, when they are children, that can have a massive impact on, well, as I say, the relationships with themselves and what they achieve as they grow up.
And I think that's just it, you know, this being grateful and stuff. It is also, okay, I haven't necessarily got what I want right this minute, but then that is what pushes you and gives you the aspirations and the dreams to do something else.
Yeah, so that's one of the other activities in the back of the book, the back of those two books as well, is looking at the hopes and dreams of what they want to achieve. So even little children will know things that they want, and it might even be that they want something next week. It might, some of them might be able to look at kind of longer term as well. And again, I think we can't have, or we struggle often to have those hopes, dreams and aspirations if we don't really understand ourselves, we don't understand kind of what we've got, our starting points, and the journey that we can go on to get there. And I think it's crucial to address that for kind of all ages, really.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, it also it's empowerment as well as giving them a bit of a positive mindset towards things. Like, I don't have it, but I can get it if I work towards it.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's the same in relationships with adults. They may not, you know, they may be single and not happy, but if they actually work on themselves and take the right steps towards finding the right partner, as opposed to accepting anyone who rocks up in their lives, they've got more chances to get what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing as well that's really important, and again, it's kind of one of the activities that's in the back of the book, is looking at what, as a child, what they are good at, because again, we all fall foul to looking at our flaws and finding our flaws, and we don't give ourselves enough credit. So I think that kind of being able to big yourself up and say, actually, I'm quite good at this, I can do this. I think that's really important as well, to have that kind of positive relationship with yourself.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that it's something of a moment, shall we say, that maybe, you know, 10 years ago we would not have been in a position where we could have done that, because just as we said just now, the culture was different? Is it something that's just starting to arise, or?
You know what, this is a question that I ask myself quite often, because so I got into personal development probably about 6 years ago was when I first started kind of getting into that area. And at that point, because I was still teaching at the time as well, everyone always asked, why is this stuff not taught in schools now? And that was part of my kind of decision in well, actually, this is really important to teach in schools. So it obviously did exist. It's existed for, well, if you think about these books like Think and Grow Rich, that's been around for God knows how long. So it's not new stuff, but I think the spin on it is developing, and I think the fact that
the internet and all of these things are making it more accessible and within reach.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it is probably becoming more mainstream. Obviously, schools are starting to get on board a little bit more as well. And yeah, I think it's probably just is that the more people are aware of it as well.
And do you also focus on communications? Because I know that sometimes, you know, parents and children can really struggle to communicate with one another, and that's not just young, that's an older age too, shall we say, and
Probably
that can be extremely
so.
frustrating. Yeah, probably more so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose generally, even just reading together generally can help with that communication, with just speaking to each other. I think what I'm trying to get across in my books is that they do cover kind of important themes. So it's not just, as I say, just even general reading a story together, pointing out what's in the pictures, asking what they like about it. Those general conversations will help those foundations of communication between adults and children.
You're taking an active interest.
Absolutely. And I think actually what I wanted to do with the themes in the books, obviously I've kind of discussed the first two there already anyway. The third book is looking at kindness and inclusion despite difficulty, disability, or difference. So again, it's another kind of really strong theme, quite topical as well at the moment, in being able to kind of have that communicative nature with adults and children to have a foundation to explore ideas, to discuss what their thoughts are on something. Obviously, this does vary depending on the age of the child, and I suppose who the adult is that's having that interaction, whether it's a parent or a professional. But I think, yeah, any reading is crucial to kind of forming those communications. And I would like to say my books kind of take that to a next step, really.
And I guess that when we talk about inclusion, for instance, and disability or whatever, if you don't explain to people from a very young age that it's okay to be different, not just within yourself, but that other people may be different or look different, sound different. I know I've got a slight speech impediment, which, when I released the audio book, was really scared about. And trust me, I've been absolutely decimated about it. But at least I've done it. But if people were taught that, it's okay, it's maybe you don't understand her, but it doesn't matter. In the same way, or maybe this person doesn't look the way that, you think they should, but that doesn't make them a bad person either.
Absolutely. And I do think a lot of that is fear, like fear of the unknown. And we're not born ist of any sort. We're not born racist. We're not born ableist. We're not born any other homophobic. All of those things are either learned or
you pick it up from somewhere.
Yeah, we develop it possibly because we don't understand it. And actually, if we can create that understanding, and similar to the first two books, like the book that I've done about that's called Ava the Mermaid, that is exploring these ideas, it does one of the activities in that one is looking at what you struggle with, the fact that we all have struggles of some sort, and that doesn't make anyone better than someone else. We can actually all support each other, and it doesn't matter, as you say, what we look like, what we sound like, what we do. We can all help. And again, I think this is where social media is almost a bit of a downfall, because the messages, I suppose it can have positives and negatives, but the messages that are on the negative side that kind of create that more negative culture, I suppose, it just means that people can access it a little bit more, and we need to counter that with the positives and actually helping that understanding develop, helping those relationships between people that where they don't exist because there is that fear of not understanding them.
And there's also, I think, one of the issues that I see a lot of at the moment, for whatever reason, not that I've been on social media that much, but there's an element of judgment, which, again, if we go back to kids judging themselves, no, am I too fat, too skinny, too this, too that, too the other, but also judging others, because some of the posts I see, because people are so convinced that they're right, they then dismiss any other opinion. And if you don't teach someone at a young age that, it's okay to have a different opinion to somebody else, and it doesn't mean that they're wrong and you're right or the other way around, it's just that you see it differently, but that's okay too.
Yeah, and I think it's important to kind of look at the critical thinking side of things as well. It's I've spoken about kind of risk taking with children, and that all forms part of the same thing of they need to be able to critically analyze what's in front of them. So is what this person is saying any more valid than what this person is saying? Like who should I listen to? Which opinion is more valid, or what information am I reading that's more valid? And I think we all live in our own little bubbles. I think like the what's going on right now, we are hearing two different sides of information, well, multiple sides of information, and people who have certain opinions about what's happening will validate themselves with other things that they hear, and will
bought it, yeah.
And they will quite easily dismiss whatever's said to the contrary. And I do think that a lot of that, and a lot of the reason why society is the way that it is at the moment in the way that they deal with this and the conflicts that come out of it, is because actually we are not, from that young age, we are not necessarily getting them to kind of critically analyze, understand, and actually take on board other people's opinions as well.
Yeah, and I think also just teaching, someone to learn that information that we are given, it's to sometimes be questioned, just, from the basis of where does it come from. I mean, even adults could learn that.
But it's hard if you think about when we're bringing children up, we quite often, it's a don't do that, and some people have the don't ask questions, I'm telling you, you don't do it. And actually if we keep giving that message to children, then that's why we've got adults at the moment. I'm not asking questions, I'm just taking that's what it is. And actually that's where we need to explain to children. So whether it's that children have, like, if they've kind of misbehaved for whatever reason, not just telling them that it's wrong and it's naughty, we'll actually explain to them what the issue is, like what is the problem that's been caused there, so that they can then think about that process and what's happened. They're not just being told, no, it's naughty, don't ask about it, move on.
Without wanting to be the devil's advocate, and without going into the entire story, because I didn't even witness it, it was said to me, funny enough, last time I was in France, about a dad who was very much doing that with his young daughter, who was 5, but so much so that it was so to the nth degree that he was too far the other way, and she then felt that she could do whatever she liked because, daddy would explain that it was wrong, but in the end she still got her way around it.
Yeah, so
can you not push that everywhere a bit too much sometimes too?
Oh, absolutely.
It's the happy medium.
I was going to say there's a very fine line to draw, and sometimes I do question, like with my eldest, she is a very confident and outgoing person, and sometimes I do wonder whether she's a little bit more on the edge of kind of, she's not cocky and arrogant, certainly not with other people, possibly occasionally at home, but yeah, it is kind of creating a fine line, and it's creating those boundaries. And no, and that was something kind of, as a parent, as a teacher, that's what you did, kind of create boundaries, but actually the children need to explore up to those points, and see. We need to allow them to grow. Children are not identical.
It's like everything. We mainly learn by experience. So you can tell me something, until I've done it myself, I'm not really going to completely grasp it. And I guess no one really teaches you how to be a parent. You kind of, do the best you can and see what happens to start off with, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it is so easy to kind of compare yourself to others, to criticize others, to criticize yourself. There isn't a manual. We are all just, I suppose, floundering around, and we flounder around the best that we are able to. I can see a difference in me. As I say, like, I got into personal development in 6 years ago, I think I said. So it was around about 2014. My youngest daughter was 5-ish at the time. So obviously her first 5 years of her life, I parented her very differently to how I then parented the first 5 years of my son's life, and even more so my youngest daughter's life. And that is all, well, as you say, it comes from experience, and
learned along the way.
Yeah, and the information that you're exposed to, like the way that I've approached things, has been completely different, and it's because I've learned new things, and actually I've questioned it, I've kind of taken on board, well, actually I don't want this to be an issue, so I'm going to adapt how I deal with the situation.
And if we talk about stories, I explain in a roundabout where I'm coming from with this. Now, as a child, most kids do need to either read or be read stories, because it is what develops the creativity, the imagination, and the growth, and all of that. In the next breath, when you see someone who's 60 years old and still believes that love is the Disney movie, again, there's got to be kind of a fine line, because there's the magic of it that we all want to believe, and then there's the stark reality.
Yeah, I suppose as we get older as well, there's the element of the word's just gone from my head. Escapism, isn't there? So a lot of when we read as we're older, it is escapism. But yes, I think in terms of the imagination and reality, children don't necessarily live in, obviously they live in reality, but they're
own.
Yeah, and you've got imaginative play, like they play shopkeepers, they play teachers, they play doctors and nurses and all sorts of things like that. Well,
imaginary friends.
Yeah, and so that is their reality at that time. Obviously that changes, and I think books and stories play completely different roles at each stages of our lives. I think the other thing to bear in mind as well is that what happens, well, with our experiences, with what we read, with all of that kind of thing as well, is what we as adults we then kind of tune back to. Our minds will always take the path that's kind of best trodden. You know yourself, if you were out in a field and there was a clear path and one that's overgrown, you are going to take the clear path. And I think that kind of reading, I'm saying in inverted commas, the right stories, the right kind of things like that, we're putting those right messages into children's heads that they can then refer back to as they are older, and that can kind of have a big impact on kind of coming back to that again, on what they do with their lives, their goals, their aspirations, what they want to achieve, how they see themselves, how they deal with situations, how they analyze information they're given, all of that.
And obviously there's an element of character. Like, for instance, some kids will be more stubborn than others, so that might make them more resilient, as an adult. But I think that, as you say, it is the basis that is going to create whether they're going to have healthy relationships and a happier life, if the basis and the foundations are put into place at an early age. And I think one of the things that you strongly believe into is to give them a voice, so that they're not afraid to say how they feel or what they believe in.
Absolutely. And I think this, yes, in all aspects, if I'm honest with you. It is, like, as I said before, it kind of comes down to when you're discussing through a story, what they see, what they believe, what they feel from that story. Another one that is obviously very topical as well at the moment is about emotions, and it's are we having those conversations about emotions? Can children explore those emotions? Are they able to, if there is an issue where they're being told off, can they explain why they did what they did? And I don't let my children say I don't know, and that came from kind of some business coaching that I had when I was like, oh well, I don't know, and that you can't say I don't know. Deep down there is a reason somewhere, and I took that on board with my children. And when they say like they did something that they shouldn't have done and I don't know, well, you must have known, or there must have been a reason. We don't always get to that, but actually to try and get them to start thinking about what it is. And
I was just about to say, it's for critical thinking and how to start thinking about things.
And it's giving them that voice to explain what they've done, and I suppose justify it to a certain extent. I always say to mine, actually, if you explain to me, you're going to get in a lot less trouble than if you don't explain to me. Mistakes are mistakes.
I think it's also about taking responsibility, because one of the things I see a lot in failed relationships is that it's always the other person's fault.
Yes, I mean, responsibility is. I've just been listening to a book actually, and it talks about fault and responsibility, and it's actually, even if something happens and it's not your fault, you are still sometimes in a situation where you have to take responsibility for what happens after that. And I think that is really important. And I think getting children to to take that responsibility. There's probably going to be kind of most of the time, it may well be that it's something that's their fault as well. But they need to be able to take responsibility for all sorts of actions, because without that, it just leads to so many problems.
Yeah, no, completely. And I guess, it is what contributes in the end to their own mental well-being, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we understand, when you say justifying, it's not so much justifying, but then understand what drives them or drove them to do right or wrong, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's understanding. So that well-being comes from kind of understanding your emotions, understanding why you do something is really quite important. And yes, we need to understand ourselves. We need to have that relationship with ourselves in order to be able to have that positive well-being.
So, Eleanor, believe it or not, we're nearing the end of our time together. So what would be your last one top tip, so to speak, to give to parents on how to empower children to be more understanding and to be more positive and kinder and inclusive and all the rest of it?
Wow, one top tip.
Yeah, one, not 3, not 10, just one.
I think it would be to speak to them, to communicate with them,
even when you don't have the time and they're winding you up.
Yeah, and sometimes don't get me wrong, there's been instances where I've kind of shouted and then instantly regretted it, and it's sometimes as an adult you do need that time to calm down, but I always go back to them. I'll apologize for if I've dealt with it as what I think is badly. I will go back to them and I will apologize and I will explain where my feelings have come from. So I think my top tip would be have that open, honest conversation, that relationship where you can speak openly to each other and explore emotions.
Kind of create feedback anyway, because when someone opens up, normally the other person will naturally open up too.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I've definitely seen it, like approaching things that way. I have definitely seen a difference in my children. As I say, just the approaches kind of with them at different ages. I think, yeah, definitely.
Well, Eleanor, thank you so much for your time today. Unfortunately, as I say, that's pretty much all we've got time for. So thanks again. And for everybody else, if you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe, leave us a review, and more importantly, come back for the next episode. Thank you.